Go. Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Bingham, and welcome to our second town hall for School Board of Fort Zumwalt. I am the parent representative and treasurer of the Find the Light Foundation. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And just to give you a little bit of history about the Find the Light Foundation, for those of you who don't know us, the Find the Light Foundation is a fully student-run and alumni-run not-for-profit organization that strives to end death by suicide and death by overdose in our young adults and teenagers. And we do that by elevating the voices of our students to become equal stakeholders with our decision makers. So I am, and will remain so until the next parent takes over, the one and only parent representative on the board. Everybody else is and will remain so a student or recent alumni of high school. So Dr. Marion, excuse me, thank you so very much for joining us. We're looking forward to chatting with you tonight.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Are you able to speak up just a little bit more?
Sure, I'll try getting a little closer. Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
I get that close, that could be scary. Sure, I want to see myself that close, but I'll try to speak up.
All right, perfect. So to start with, can you just share maybe 2 minutes or so, just a little bit about you?
Sure, I can do that. First of all, I want to start by, I really didn't know anything about Find the Light Foundation until you contacted me, and it really resonates with me because my family, there's a family history of mental health issues and depression and anxiety. My daughter's a special education teacher in early childhood education. My wife was a middle school and elementary counselor. And of course, I spent 29 years as a public educator, as a teacher, and also as a high school principal and superintendent eventually. So I've certainly seen my share of suicides over the years, and there's nothing that'll break your heart more. And I've also seen the landscape change so dramatically over my career with as far as the needs of kids, social and emotional needs from a younger age. So I'm just hoping that I can use some of my experiences to help Fort Zumwalt navigate down that path. But what a great foundation. The fact that it's student-led, that's remarkable, really. So something to be proud of.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I wish I could take credit for it, but like I said, I'm just there to facilitate funding is really all I do.
Well,
it's definitely important. So a little bit about the format of our town halls. What we've done is we've opened up over the last many weeks a request for questions in our community, and we've received a number of questions both from students, parents, faculty, staff. We've got some from bus drivers, and we've taken those and we've randomized those. And so all of the candidates will be receiving the same questions in the same order. And so we're going to try to get through as many as we can. Each candidate, if we're not able to get through the questions, then we'll send them on to the candidates and you'll be able to answer those on your own. So I encourage anybody that's on here, we'll be able to stay on, and after 1 hour, you will be able to answer or to ask Jeff your own questions. And then after 1 hour, any questions that were asked by our community, Jeff will be able to answer on his own. So make sure to stay tuned to his own information for that. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. The first couple questions that we have, none of these I need to also speak to, none of these were prepared by Find the Light. These are all community driven. Okay. So the first couple are really do speak to mental health. And so, do you have any ideas on how to help our schools cope with the current mental health crisis that our youth are currently facing?
Well, first of all, I think you got to recognize that it is a crisis. And I certainly do recognize that. Like I said, I've watched the landscape change so dramatically. And I've tried to do things over my career to help meet those needs. So what I think we need to do is we need to keep enhancing the partnerships that we have in the community. We are fortunate in St. Charles County in a lot of ways compared to some of our counterparts in different parts of the state, et cetera. Like, we have youth in need. We have the Children's Community Resource Board. We have a lot of different. Compass Health, a huge one, used to be Kreider. They come send counselors into our buildings. Those are all fantastic pieces of the puzzle. We need to keep those contracts going. We need to expand them, and we need to supplement them with our own employees, social workers, behavior interventionists, the kind of crisis counselors that really can work with those kids that may unfortunately be so overwhelmed with things. It could be a mental health issue. It could be something else that's driving them to the brink to consider suicide or whatever else it might be. And we want to try and meet those needs, whatever they might be. Two things I'm really proud of in the City of St. Charles School District when I was there, because it came, it's funny, I tell this story once in a while. When I was principal, when I first became principal, you think, gosh, we have so much to do as educators, we can't be everything to them, right? So I've watched my own self change my philosophy over the course of 30 years from, this is our job. We do these things. Parents take care of these things. Forget that. I realized as I got in there and started working with the families and the students and watch these things emerge, we have to do whatever we can to teach the whole child. And if they have issues affecting school, we're part of the solution. Either that or we're part of the problem. So what can we do to help meet those needs? That may be connecting them to outside agencies. For example, two things stand out to me that are real examples of things you can do in communities. In our community, we did two things that I think made a huge difference in helping the needs of our kids and families in crisis. We started a Care to Learn chapter. And if you're not familiar with Care to Learn, it was founded in Springfield. That's where it started and then expanded to St. Louis. When they called me and told me about it, I couldn't wait to join up in my first year as superintendent because it met a need that we had. It provides health, hunger, and hygiene needs for just the students in the City of St. Charles School District, or in this case, if Fort Zumwalt had a chapter, it would be just for the Fort Zumwalt students, where if there's anything, very broad stroke, health, hygiene, or hunger issues that are keeping that child from coming to school and being effective, that organization can step in and help meet those needs and take care of that, take that stress off of the family and help them be able to meet their basic needs to be able to come to school. That's been extremely successful. It takes hard work, but our community organized around it. We have that in place. It also goes in tandem with a Neighbor Helping Neighbor program that was founded in 2013, where Matt Miller, who's a pastor of Calvary Church, he called the meeting. It had the mayor, it had myself as superintendent of schools, it had elected officials, it had counselors, it had people from all walks of life in the community saying, we have these issues in our community. And it's not only affecting those individuals, it affects our whole community, it affects our schools, it affects everything. How is there a better way to connect everyone so that we can help these people? We founded the Neighbor Helping Neighbor program. And that is it's a service coalition. And what they do is all the agencies interconnect. And when you have an issue, a counselor, for example, sees an issue with a family, they can contact the Neighbor Helping Neighbor. They will reach out, have a care coordinator, talk with those folks, make an assessment. And if it meets the needs, they assign someone to walk beside them and try to provide resources, but not only resources to help the immediate need, which they do, but more importantly, help them break the cycle of why they're in that position. Go through training and kind of advocate with them on ways to keep that from happening again the next month and again the next month, whether it's I can't pay my electric bill or whatever that might be, or they're having trouble finding a job. So it really is all about, yes, we'll help your emergent need, but we're going to help you learn how to cope so that we don't keep this cycle going. Between those two things, we really are able to meet needs in St. Charles. I know we can replicate that, whether it's those particular programs or something just unique to Fort Zumwalt, much larger geographically. I get that. So I think it would be tougher, but it can be done. But I think the whole point is, it has to be a community action plan. How do we all hook ourselves together and take this as we all need to do this? And one thing I'm really proud of also when it comes to Care to Learn, which again was health, hunger, and hygiene, the health, we really fought hard as a St. Charles chapter to make sure that included mental health, because we see that in the classrooms, we see that in the schools every day, and we know how big an impact that has not only on the children, but the whole learning environment. So we're really proud that we were able to provide mental health services as part of that health, hunger, and hygiene. So it might have been too long-winded, but I will tell you, the folks out there, if you have a chance, go check out the websites for Care to Learn, the big one, and just the St. Charles chapter. And the same thing, look up Neighbor Helping Neighbor St. Charles. It'll give you a good idea of some of the kind of things you can do that are real actionable ways to make a difference in our community. And I'd like to help Fort Zumwalt copy, learn from that, and do something that can be just as effective here.
Okay, perfect. I will share with you, we've got about 30 questions. So
Okay.
if
It won't be that long, I promise.
okay, so
I'm very good at being concise, but that one I just wanted to stress those two things.
okay, perfect. All right, next question. How can students be involved in the decision-making process?
Okay. Well, I think you need to seek the input. I don't think you can only rely on people to contact you, because that's an intimidating process to do, whether you're a school administrator, a teacher, or the Board of Education. So I think we need to do a better job of seeking input, being visible in the community, in the schools, asking kids how it's going, what do they think about different things that are being considered, and just be open and communicate. I think that's the biggest thing we can do. Let them use their voice, seek it out, make them comfortable to use it.
Okay, perfect. Aside from the business aspects of how the district is run, what types of ideas do you have to help students in the Fort Zumwalt School District be successful and well-rounded before they graduate high school?
Well, I think they do a pretty good job now, but I do think there's a renewed emphasis on not everyone goes to college, not everybody wants to or can or should. And I think over the last 10 years, probably, I've seen the stigma related to technical training kind of shed away, because the trades are very important. They're high paying, they're skilled. We need to make sure we're not cutting off options for kids. And I think part of that starts in our counseling office. You know, for so long we were trained to college, college, college. That's what everybody needs to do, right? We need to make sure our counseling services are advising the kid and all of their variety of ideas, not just college. What are all the different things that we can do? So I think counseling is a big piece of it. We need to have that wide breadth of scope as far as our electives and courses that can take.
Okay, terrific. This one specifically did come from a student. How can the school district address student drug addiction? Just say no isn't enough.
Yes, that is true. I wish it was that easy. We all do wish it was that easy. I think part of some of the things that you have to do is you have to be looking for the signs and symptoms. You need to be having staff trained to observe and see signs, and parents. I think parents have a big piece of what to look for. There needs to be an educational component with parents. We need to make sure they're not stockpiling old prescriptions that lay in their countertops or lay in their cabinets that kids can pick up and experiment with. Simple things like that, how to toss out your old prescriptions so they're not there. I've seen a lot of kids when they get into athletics, they'll get a surgery on the knee, they'll get prescribed pain pills, and an addiction leak comes from that. So I think those are things we have to educate people on what to look for, whether it's parents or staff. We have to have mental health assessments, of course, completely transparent with parents, notification, et cetera, but we need to have staff trained to help identify issues, not just mental health issues, but any kind of addiction issues that might arise. So I think a lot of education, a lot of training, working hand in hand with the home and parent.
So quick follow-up to that. In terms of like the follow-up with the parents, how do you approach it if perhaps that follow-up with the family isn't safe, or perhaps that's where the stress is coming from?
Could be part of the problem. We don't know, right? Well, I think in those cases, if you've reached out and you've done that, I think you can't be afraid to use the systems you have in place. It may be time to make that hotline call, get family services involved so they can do an investigation into what's going on in the home to make sure it's a safe environment. But more than that, maybe you have a social worker or someone reach out to the family and say, hey, can we help you connect? If you had something like Neighbor Helping Neighbor, it's a perfect example where you could set them up, make a referral, and they could have a care coordinator try to assess their issues and get them into getting help for themselves, connect them with the right agency. So I think that's an example of how you can try to approach those situations.
Okay, terrific. How would you like to see the district evaluate learning and developmental deficits from mask wearing in school?
For mask wearing.
Or do you think there have been learning and developmental deficits from mask wearing in school?
Well, I certainly know there's been learning deficits, whether it's from the mask wearing or the fact that there's been a lot of virtual learning, the attendance, pandemic quarantining. I don't know how you pinpoint which variable had the biggest impact. I really don't know how you would do that. Certainly masks are not convenient. It's harder to understand kids, harder to understand when other people speak. So certainly it might have had some impact, but I think learning loss is learning loss. So regardless of the cause, we have to look at it. We have to figure out what's going on, and we have to be very thoughtful about how we try to approach those learning losses.
Okay, perfect. I addressed the school in October about having a mental health class for students. How do you feel about such a class? Would this be something that you would support?
I think it's certainly something I could support if it's done right, and whether that's within the health curriculum, but not just a 2-week unit, but something that's embedded long-term, or a standalone course maybe that kids could take. But I think the problem with an elective, will the right kids take it? I think that's something that all kids could benefit from. I mean, how long do you have to see these issues before you realize, wow, we've got to provide something we haven't provided before? And I think that mental health class might just be the answer potentially. So we have to work with mental health professionals that are smarter than at least me in that particular area. Listen to some experts, talk to kids about what they see as the biggest issues, and find a way to present it in a way that they'll really take advantage of it.
Okay, terrific. Where do you stand on the issue of banning books, like in the case of Wentzville School District recently?
Yeah, I'm very skeptical, honestly, of banning books. I think that, I trust our teachers and librarians. And if we've had a book that's been properly vetted and they've pinpointed an academic reason to have it, I think it would take a whole lot to convince me that we need to take it off the shelf. You can never say never, right? But I think there would have to be some dire consequences occurring as a result of having that available for me to go along with banning it. They have to be overwhelming evidence that we needed to do that. Because I do think what a lot of the, at least what I've been reading, some of the objections to some of the books are just about what the content is, whether it's portraying LGBTQ queer kind of things or homosexuality or violence and sex. Well, here's the thing. We need to have, that's the real world. We need to have reading materials that represent all of our students and not just one mindset. That's not our job. It's not our job to judge our students. It's our job to provide opportunities, provide materials that will challenge them, get them to think critically so they can make their own decisions and judgments. That's our job.
Okay. Along with that, how are you going to advocate for and support special education and related service providers in the district?
Well, it's something that's very important to do. Again, it seems to be a growing number of students having these learning needs. So we have to continually monitor the programs we're offering to make sure they're still meeting the needs. What worked 10 years ago might not cut it today. And so we have to watch the data, look for those trends. If it's going the wrong way, let's try to find out why. Let's talk to parents. Let's talk to educators. What's missing? What do you need? And let's try to find a way to address those needs.
Okay. What is your stance on LGBTQ supports at our schools in the form of gay straight alliance clubs and assistance for students who are transitioning?
Well, again, my emphasis is a school's role should be support a kid no matter what, right? It's not my job. I think it's the family's responsibility to pass judgment and to counsel kids regarding what's appropriate and what not when it comes to things, sexual orientation, gender identities. I don't think it's the school's role to take a judgment stand on that. If we have kids coming to school who fit those descriptions and they're struggling, we need to help. And we need to give them a voice so they can seek out the guidance or the support or whatever it is they need in order to feel comfortable in our schools, because it should be a place for everyone.
Okay, terrific. What is your stance on school choice?
I'm not a fan. I'll be honest with you, my career in public education, I've watched voucher programs, school choice, charter schools. To me, they're all efforts to funnel public money away from public schools when, to be honest with you, the state hasn't fully funded public schools the way they're supposed to in years. So until the state can fully fund the formula they have in place now for public schools, how in the world can you afford to take some of that money and put it into private sectors, whether directly or indirectly? I think it's just going to lead to more public school failure. It's just going to exacerbate the problem. And that's not what we should be doing in the state of Missouri. We should be making sure we maximize and equalize the funding for all school districts, not funneling it away to people who might have choice and be able to exercise that. Because most of the choice systems I've seen, everyone doesn't have the equal option to choose those other things. What you end up having is you have a gap, in my opinion, between the haves and have-nots that'll just continue to grow if you provide things like school choice and funnel public funds away from public education.
Okay, terrific. The American Medical Association, Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, all recommend evidence-based and comprehensive sex education programs be offered to students. Will you, as an elected board member, address the need for comprehensive sex education and also acknowledge that the current program is not comprehensive? If so, what timeline will you set to address the transition to an effective sex education program?
Well, I do believe in comprehensive sex education. I think it is needed. And I also have experience with the fact that there's a lot of contention and there's a lot of disagreements, and there is no perfect sex ed curriculum in the minds of the community, right? Because what you think is a perfect curriculum may be way too, I don't even know what term you would use. Maybe, some people don't think we need to share everything as far as birth control, those different things. I think we do, but I also think parents and the community members need to have a chance to opt out of it But in order to know whether they want to do that or not, we have to be transparent. They have to know exactly what's involved. So I think we got to work with the community and parents best we can to figure out what they think is best in our community. But I do think we need to have comprehensive options for our kids, because they have access to the internet. They're learning all kinds of things that could be good or bad, or give them a very skewed view of what sex is for the normal everyday person. And, to think that somehow we're going to harm them with factual, science-based curriculum, I don't buy that. I think we need to give them a little more credit.
Okay. How will you manage conflict within the board?
Well, that's always a challenge, isn't it? Because with 7 people on a board, they represent the community just like the community. Not everybody agrees. So I think the importance there is we need to model for our audience and our community members that we can disagree without name calling and yelling at each other, and we can still even respect each other. But let's focus on what we do agree on. What are the common interests? I don't believe there's any board member out there that doesn't have good intentions, right? I think they ran for what they believe is right. So if we believe that, we should assume goodwill. We should try to talk to people. We should encourage people to do their due diligence, though. If I was a board member, I would push nicely that we do our research and we don't, form decisions before we have all the information, and that we consider that we don't just represent people who think this way or that way. We represent all kids. So let's find a common interest and let's try to resolve this in a way that we'd be proud to share with our kids.
Okay, terrific. Do you believe in science?
Well, I sure hope so. Yes, that sounds like a trick question that you would ask.
We didn't come up with these. These are all from our community. So just
Sure.
don't shoot the messenger.
I think it's telling that someone felt the need to ask that. Absolutely, I believe in science. I believe different people interpret science differently. Okay, I get that. But I do think we need, there are some things you can't dispute. When it's scientific, it's scientific. So you can decide a lot of things, but you can't always change the facts, if that makes sense. So yes, I believe in science.
Okay. What do you think it means to work toward an equitable educational experience for our students? And is this something that you hope to achieve?
Yes, absolutely. I do believe in that. It's tricky business, and because there are a time for things to be exactly the same for all kids, and there's other times when that doesn't make sense at all. And I think that's when it gets, when people start to question it, well, why are we doing X for this kid and not this kid? Well, because that kid has a different need. I think we need to become okay the fact that not every child is the same. Not every child needs the same thing. So why are we giving the same assignment when a kid over here, that's like saying a student with a learning disability, shouldn't ever get a modification or some kind of accommodation. Well, they're getting the same thing this kid is. So make it or break it, kid. I don't think anybody believes that's fair. Well, why isn't that true across the board, right? I don't believe equity is treating all kids the same all the time. We do what they need. That's what the game plan should be.
Okay, all right, terrific. We need additional door locks and latches, and I'm assuming this came from a teacher. We need additional door locks and latches, or perhaps a parent, to aid in lockdowns. What is your stance on bettering our safety in classrooms and other areas, such as buses and playgrounds?
I'll start with the buildings, because playgrounds and buses present their own unique challenges. But the buildings, I think we should, and it looks like, I know in Prop 4, they're working to add some entrances, the building secured entrances with vestibules where you can buzz people in before they get right in on everyone. I think that's good. Safety is kind of something else I'm proud of with the work that I was able to do over my career. I think we have to fortify the building to an extent as far as making sure we know who's in our building, that we're doing our due diligence. But then I think the other piece of that is we have to have a way for all staff and students to be able to notify the rest of the building when there's an issue. We went with a safe defense system. There are other systems like that in my previous district, but we use that. Anyone can initiate it. Doesn't take the office to go on the PA. Any kid, you can find the box, initiate the alarm, and everyone knows where the alarm was set off, and they know to take proper precautions, hopefully, and that's been trained. The other thing I will tell you that I'm a big on is no secret code words. The last thing you want in an emergency that's stressful is kids or staff or substitutes not knowing what the code word is and confused about what to do. The best thing we can do, in my experience, is arm our students and teachers with knowledge and empower them to make decisions that will save their life, right? So we need to make them comfortable. Yes, we have a plan, and in most circumstances, you might need to exit this way and take cover or do Y, but we don't know what the threat will be. There's no way to predict. So that might not be an option when something happens. You need to know it's okay to do something else. Think about the best thing to do, make that choice, and do it with confidence. So I think we need to make sure that we're not just saying, hey, every situation you do X, because we cannot say that. That is not likely to be the case. No two situations are ever the same.
Okay. All right, terrific. Many kids suffer with mental health issues, and educating in the classroom has been a challenge for teachers. What can the school district do to support our teachers going forward to make sure that they have the training, the knowledge and help and tools to work with kids with all different types of issues returning to school after the pandemic?
Right. Well, I think we need to do a better job of asking them what they think they need. And that's not just Zumwalt, that's human nature, that's everywhere, right? We assume everything's okay unless you tell them differently. Well, most people won't speak up unless you make an effort to reach out to them. So I think we need to ask them, what do you need? Where do you feel your skills are lacking? What kind of support or training do you need? And we need to work like heck to try and make that happen within our budget constraints.
Okay, terrific. I know that equal doesn't mean the same thing. It means that we all get what we need. What can you do to help kids who need more?
It's a good question, and I don't know if there's any one answer to it. I think we have to look, I think we've learned a lot over the last 2 years and counting with the pandemic and being forced to do things differently on the fly. Maybe there's something we can learn from that we need to be more adaptability and more creative, adaptable and more creative in the offerings that we have for learning. Maybe not everyone has to learn in the same classroom setting. Maybe kids that thrive with a virtual platform can get more of that, while others have a different set. Maybe we need to do more summer learning, not just for a particular targeted audience, but what across the board, what do we need to offer? So I think we need to learn from that and do a better job of providing more options for kids and parents. Educate parents, how can they help? I think parents would help if they knew how, in many cases, right? So how do we hook them up? Maybe it's a parent academy. How can you help your kid? Spend a couple nights with us. We'll give you some tips on what you can do. So I think we have to kind of think out of the box. I know that's cliche, but we need to be more creative, offer more variety.
Okay, all right. Speaking of that, what are some things that you think that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic with regards to education?
Well, like I said, I think the biggest thing we learned is, wow, we can provide virtual learning. And we can have a combination of the two. And it wasn't perfect. We didn't have time to plan it out as well as we would have liked us. So how good could it be if we planned it out ahead of time? And now what have we learned works and what doesn't? Let's build on that. Let's use it as a teaching tool and start building some of those things in naturally. Let's learn from what we had to do under the gun, so to speak.
Okay. How will you handle bus drivers leaving our district to work for other districts that pay more? They're going to Francis Howell, St. Charles, Wentzville, Troy, or even fast food because it's better pay. We're losing drivers and are overloading buses 3 to a seat all ages during a pandemic because Fort Zumwalt will not give us competitive pay. We have tried to change things, talked to the board in the past, and we're just dismissed every time because we're just overlooked at the bottom of the totem pole, like we're simple-minded bus drivers. How will you handle the overloaded buses and stand up for the drivers?
Wow, that, first of all, to have a bus driver state it like that, like they feel like they're the bottom of the pile and they're simple-minded, that hurts my heart. That's not okay. We need to do better than that. One of the places mentioned where we lose drivers to is St. Charles. That's not an accident. We worked hard to make that pay competitive. We eliminated contracted services, brought it in-house so we could be more personalized and make sure that our bus drivers were treated like other parts of our staff and they felt important. So it's not all about pay, and I know budget's finite. You don't have, I mean, we can't spend $1 million on every problem, but we can do better if that's a goal, if it's a priority. Your money tends to follow your priorities. So if our pay is not competitive, we may not have made it enough of a priority. Hard part is what else where do you give elsewhere? But I can tell you, no matter what we pay them, if they don't feel like they're valued, it really won't matter what we pay them. So that may be a bigger issue to start with. We've got to make sure that they feel valued and listened to. And I would certainly try to do my part to try and make that happen. I do have experience with it. So I hope we can do a better job of that, because I sure hate to hear any employee talk like that.
Okay, all right, thank you. What makes you think that you are a better candidate than the other candidates that are currently running for school board?
It's a good question. There's some great candidates. I'm not going to lie. You know, I watched Amy Robertson's Light the Foundation. Her heart is pure. Her passion, you can see it. I'd be comfortable with her as a board member. You know, I don't know as much about the other ones. John Christopher's, you know, long career in education. There's a lot of good candidates. I think I do have some things to offer because I have addressed some of these and I have experience with concrete strategies to address them, where maybe some other board members who haven't been in education and the roles that I've been won't have. So I think that there won't be as much catch-up time on my part. I think I already have a wide knowledge base, lots of practical experience, and I just hope to be able to use that to help bring the board along maybe more quickly than we could otherwise to get some of these serious needs met.
Okay, terrific. How do you think that we can work together to repair the relationship between our district administration and our teachers?
Well, that's hard to do if it doesn't come natural. How do I want to phrase this? I think we just have to show them. I mean, it's going to take time. If there's truly a fraction between the two, no, you know, you're not going to have coffee and tea one day and it's all going to be good. Teachers, whatever employee group, are going to have to feel heard and valued over a period of time before they believe it's going to be sustainable. And it's the real thing. So we need to work hard as a board to set the expectation that whether you're a principal or a teacher, we expect everyone to treat each other with respect and to communicate and focus on the common good and what's for kids, and model that every day. When we do that and we do it over a long period of time, we'll win that trust back. And that's what we have to try to do.
Okay. How do you think we can make Board of Education meetings less chaotic? What do you think is the main role of the Board of Education?
Well, the main role of the Board of Education is to govern in the interest of what's best for all students, right? And to set policy, approve policy, and let our administrators and teachers and the rest of the staff enforce that and go about their business. So again, I think modeling is important. Excuse me. So I think that to make them less chaotic, we just have to treat each other civilly. I mean, that's what's going to make it less chaotic. When you talk about board-to-board interactions, if the chaos is coming from public comments, well, we're not doing something right. If they feel the need to come up and air the dirty laundry there in that setting, that means somewhere along the line, we didn't meet their needs. Not that you can satisfy everyone. We all know that's not always possible. But if that's a trend, then you got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Where is it breaking down the communication where they felt like they had to come to this avenue and behave in this way to get the attention maybe that they feel like they deserve?
Okay. What does having an inclusive classroom mean to you? And how will you ensure diversity and inclusion is occurring in the district?
Well, inclusive education in the education standpoint, I don't know if they meant it this way, so maybe I'll hedge my bets a little bit. But inclusive education and definition is talking about students with IEPs who have special needs in the classroom. That's kind of been what inclusive education means in education over the last however many years. Least restrictive environment, make sure we have those kids in as many regular classrooms as we can with peers of their same age, et cetera, so that they can learn from them as well and get the full scope of socialization that they need. But more than that, if you want to broadly step, we need to make sure that all of our courses, all of our teachers, all of our classrooms accept students of diversity, no matter what that kid looks like, no matter where they come from, no matter what they believe religion-wise, no matter how they identify gender, it doesn't matter. This is a place for you. You're welcome here. We want you to learn. How can we do that? That's the kind of thing that I want. So in a broader sense of inclusive education, that's what I hope that would mean.
Okay, all right, terrific. Please share your thoughts on what role the IEP or 504 process plays in the public system.
Well, it plays an important one because that's kind of the blueprint for setting goals and strategies for how a kid's going to be able to overcome the learning disabilities that they have in order to achieve. So that's a very important thing, and we need to make sure that all voices are heard in that, from the parent and the student, him or herself, as well as the teachers, regular ed and special ed. I think that process goes on every day. It's time consuming, it's a lot of paperwork, but it's really important to do well. So I think that we just have to make sure that we're providing the resources and the time for those kind of collaborations to occur like they should be.
All right, terrific. Are you willing to respect expert opinions on various issues, public health and safety within the district?
Absolutely. You know, I think if there's one of the things you have to recognize as a board member is that you can't possibly know everything. And we all need people who know more than we do on a particular topic. We need to reach out, we need to hear that guidance, and we need to take it seriously. If you really have no experience or knowledge in that area, we shouldn't argue with the folks who do. We can ask questions, we can seek to understand, and we can even ask if there are different ways to achieve the same goal based on, you know, maybe something you're not comfortable with, et cetera. But, you know, we need to know there are people out there that know more than we do, and we need to seek them out and value that, not brush them off or somehow look down on that.
Okay. How do you support, or how are you going to support teacher salaries becoming more aligned with other districts to keep experienced staff who have worked for the district long term?
Yeah. Well, I recognize that as an issue. I've looked at the salary scales, very similar to when I took over in St. Charles. We were at the bottom of the county. You can't attract and attain the best people that way. So I do think we have work to do. I especially noticed the teacher's been here a long time. It's the top end's not very good. Other parts of it are okay, but starting salary could be better. We certainly have areas to improve, and I think that certainly that needs to be something to focus on. All staff salary, like we said, bus drivers, not just teachers, bus drivers, support staff. We need to make sure that all of our staff are competitively paid within our budget. Budget's real. I know that. I'm not gonna. I don't have a bunch of money to bring with me to the board meeting. I share. I wish I did. But boy, if we think creatively, what can we do? And if we make it a goal to maybe work on this part of the salary schedule first, once we get that where we want, we go to the next thing. Let's prioritize it. Let's get a game plan rather than just kind of making do every year. Let's get a long-term strategy how we can make this salary schedule more competitive.
Okay, all right. What are your views or opinions of the Fort Zumwalt School District Board of Education and how they've handled the COVID-19 challenges so far? What would you have done differently, and what changes would you make for the future should we be presented with it?
Well, that's, I think it's easy to judge the folks sitting in those positions, but to be honest, I don't know that it's real fair in a lot of ways because nobody had been through anything like this before. So everyone was learning on the fly. I think the board did the best they could with the information they had, as far as I can see. I think they were able to keep kids in school if the kids wanted to be there and parents wanted to be. So I think that's something that they are proud of and should be. But I also think that we have to make sure that we're listening to health experts on our guidance, find the happy medium. What's our community really, it's a lot like security. What are we comfortable with? How do we find the happy medium to make sure we're safe, but also mitigate some of the problems that come along with some of those health procedures that we know are good practice. So I don't want to judge them. I think they did a decent job. Everybody could do a better job in hindsight. If they could go back and do it again, they probably would do a few things differently. But I think that they did the best they could, and I hate to judge them after the fact. I wasn't in their seat, so I don't know. If I'd had the same information presented that they did, I might have made the same decisions. So who am I to judge at this point?
Okay, all right. What are your feelings regarding, and we spoke about banning books, but critical race theory, and how do you envision going about managing these sort of difficult hot button issues?
Yeah, and critical race theory is certainly a hot button topic. And I think it's unfortunate because what I know of it, and I'm certainly not an expert, it's not intended to be a K through 12th grade curriculum. I think that's a misnomer out there. I'm not aware of any K-12 school district implementing true CRT. It's meant to be a college level course. And I think the fact that we intermix the term with all equity education, that's not good. They're not the same. No subject, racial discrimination, racial tensions, none of that should be taboo discussion topics in schools. I think CRT, too many people are focusing on anything we do with equity education must be CRT, thus it must be bad. And that's unfortunate. I think that's going to hurt us and help us and just divide us. And I don't like it.
So how would you address that? Just as if it's presented to you as a board member or as any hot button topic, this or another one?
Right. Well, I think I probably have very much conversation that I just said. I would say, well, explain to me, what are we, and that depends on what the topic is. Do they think we are teaching CRT currently? Well, that's one question. Do they think we should? Do some people want it? It depends on how they phrase the question. But to say we need to do whatever we can to prevent CRT from coming to the district, why are we even saying that? No one's proposing that critical race theory as a very specific college curriculum is coming to the school district. That's not an option. It's a moot point. So don't confuse anything else we talk about equity-wise with that. They're two different things completely. We have students of color. We have students from diverse backgrounds. They all have to feel comfortable. And I think we just do great damage to our relationships and with our community members and kids when we start dangerously using language and talking about things that we don't fully understand.
Okay. All right. Terrific. I've completely lost my place on this page. Sorry about that. There we go. What do you see from other school districts like Francis Howell or Wentzville that they are doing well or poorly that you would like to either implement or avoid? Not to call out your peers, but.
Right. I certainly wouldn't want them calling me out when I was again, I don't know that much about what's going on in those districts other than what everybody else does, what you might read in the newspaper or what you might, talk to somebody. And I don't know that that's ever the full story. So without knowing internally what's really going on, I don't want to judge. I don't know that they're, certainly you can look at different programs. I'm trying to think if there are any specifically that I know stand out. I think every district in the county does a good job. They certainly Francis Howell was a leader when it came to providing early education, and other districts have followed along. I think we do need to do that. We can learn from each other. We need to be talking, and it shouldn't be a competition unless it's a friendly competition.
Mm-hmm.
It should be hey, what are you doing that works? I want to try that, and here's something we do. You try that. In the end, we're all in this together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Education. Those
Okay.
are artificial.
All right. Sorry, hang on a second here. I'm trying to move this into a different thing so I can take a look at our Facebook feed.
Already.
Let's see. There we go. Okay. Okay. So a couple more questions. How do you plan on using your position to advocate for students? And how do you plan to use your position to advocate for teachers?
Well, I think the only way you advocate for anyone is to try to put yourself in their shoes and include them in the process. And that's what I would try to do. I would try to always consider the perspectives of the folks that our decisions are impacting. How will it affect them? Because I always, when you're talking about decisions, you have to think through what could go wrong. If you make the wrong decision, what might happen? And sometimes that can help you if you're stuck. If you're looking at a situation where you're working with teachers or a student, and there seems a problem that has a logical answer, at least in your mind. Well, if you make that decision you think is right, and it turned out to be the wrong one, what are the consequences? And if you do that evaluation and the consequences are pretty severe in a negative way, maybe that's not the right decision, because you can't afford to make a decision that potentially could have that negative impact on folks. So err on the side of caution when it comes to working with students and teachers and their needs, and don't assume you know better than they do. They're in a situation you're not in. Try to see it from their point of view. And likewise, they have to listen to you from your viewpoint. That's called interest-based decision making. Here are my interests, there are your interests. Let's work together to find a common solution that satisfies both.
All right, terrific. What are your thoughts on career-oriented classes such as computer science and shop?
I think we mentioned a little bit earlier in an earlier question, I think a variety of courses is critical. I think we need to make sure that we don't phase out the courses that may lead to trades. There's a growing demand for that. They're very valuable skills for our students to have, and they need to know about those options. And we need to let our curriculum be driven by what students and parents need and want. So if they're, as we're surveying parents or talking to people, they're saying, hey, we need more of X. Well, let's consider that. Can we find a way to do that? So should be driven by what our community feels they need for the students.
Okay, terrific. Mistreatment is not happening only between kids, but also between teachers and staff and kids. When stories conflict, how can we make sure the child's perspective is being heard?
Well, that's certainly not something you can go to a textbook and probably find a way to do it. I think at some point you have to make sure that you've given every party involved an opportunity to be heard, you fully understand where they're coming from, and then in the end, you have to make a judgment on what you think the real story is. Because if you didn't see it, and they're the only two people maybe that were involved, at some point you've got to do your best to figure out, again, what is the most, what's the preponderance of the evidence tell us? And if we're not 100% sure, then we need to make sure that our consequences reflect that. If we're making a mistake, what are the consequences here? And make sure that we're trying to do something that, yes, might deter behavior if it was bad on either part, but also will allow this person to recover and be successful.
Okay, all right. What steps will you take to unite our school community after several years of division?
Well, again, I think you just have to be out there, need to be visible and genuine, show people you're willing to listen and be open to communication. And when you're listening, that means listening to understand, not simply be thinking of how you can respond in your head and not really focus on what they're saying. Because there's a difference, right? And that's human nature. We all do it sometimes, but we need to really try to control ourselves, give ourselves a chance to focus on what they're saying and understand before we try to respond. And I think we have to model that. It will take time, and we have to make it clear in our expectations from the top down that we expect all people to be treated civilly, and we need to model that every day. And hopefully that will make a difference long term.
Okay, terrific. I have one more question, and then I'll turn it over to you for closing stuff. Why do you want this job?
Why do I want this job? Well, that's a good question. I retired 3 years ago. I miss it to some degree. There's plenty I do not. But I just feel like it's something that's, I see it as service to me. I think I have something to offer with my knowledge and experience. I don't have any hidden agendas. So I'm going in with an open mind, and I will consider everything before me with an open mind. I'm not beholden to anybody. I just want to do what's best for everybody. So I believe that with that knowledge, with a long history in the district, I graduated from the district. I've always lived in the district, been in education. I just think I have some skills that I might be able to help the board make some good decisions. So that's why I want to do it. I don't want to let my brain just, waste away in my retirement years. I want to be active and serve my purpose a little bit.
Okay, terrific. What would you like for us to know before we wrap up?
I think I'd just like folks to know that, as I mentioned, You know, I just want to try and serve. You know, I'm not looking to become famous or make a big stand up there. I just want to help the board work collectively to do the best job that we can for the kids and make sure the kids and teachers and everyone have their voices.
Okay, thank you so much. Everybody, this has been Dr. Jeff Marion. Please remember that if you are over 18, then you are eligible to vote, and you are still eligible to register to vote for a few more days. So please, if you've not done that, make sure that you go ahead and do that, because every vote counts. Jeff, thank you so much. This has been a fabulous conversation. I truly appreciate it.
A little bit.
Take care.
Over me.